Okay, this lesson is going to be trick fingerings on the saxophone to get you past some technical hurdles or some of the weird fingering stuff that's going on with the saxophone. So I got my tenor out here so you guys can see it's a little bit bigger than my alto. The first one I'm going to go over is the F to F sharp trick. So when you're playing F to F sharp, right, it's weird because you have to do this crossover like this. And that can sound kind of floppy. It can kind of sound like this. Right, that doesn't sound too good because it's flop, 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 flop like that. So this key that is right, it's kind of pretty much right under the F sharp key. This is the alternate F sharp. And all you do is you just press your F and then you just press this down. So you don't have to flop back and forth like this. And that's really useful for doing any kind of chromatic lines or anything where you need to flip-flop through those two notes really, really fast. So that sounds like this. Right, that sounds way, way better. So a similar one is the B natural to C natural. That's the same flip-flopping thing, but you're just doing it with your left hand. And that can sound really crummy too. So on the right hand keys of the saxophone, you've got these like right hand palm keys, side finger keys right here. This middle one, that one is for the alternate C, and that opens this little vent guy right up here. Right, and so you just press, same kind of thing as the F sharp. You play your B and then hit that, and then that's your C. And it's not quite as in tune as the normal C, but it's better than nothing. So, again, easy with chromatics and also just, getting through that passage without stumbling and sounding kind of flipsy-flopsy. So the next one that is pretty much one of the most important ones, I think, is the bis B-flat, which, why it's called bis B-flat, B-I-S B-flat, is because that means next to in French. And so the bis B-flat is this little tiny little guy right under your B. And you've always kind of probably wondered, what the heck is that thing? Well, that's what it is. It's the bis B-flat. And so if you're playing in a key that has B-flats in it instead of B naturals, instead of having to do the 1, 2, and side B-flat right here, you would just do the bis B-flat where you've got your B, and then you're holding your bis B-flat down with the same finger. And that is way, way, way more convenient than having to transition between, A and B flat and having to move your other hand too, because your technique is going to work better if everything kind of flows in one line without having to use a lot of other triggers to get it to work. So that's why sometimes the side B to C and F to F sharp fingerings are a little bit weird sometimes because you're kind of having to do other things with other hands. But with this one, that's a really easy one. It's just anytime you're playing in a key with flats in it, you just press that down like at the same time as the B key with the bis B flat, and you don't have to worry about, alternating with that side B flat, which can be kind of clunky. That's a really popular one, and it's really easy to do. And pretty much all the greats do it. I've pretty much only seen one or two professional saxophone players that don't use bis. So you guys should use bis. The next one is this little trick that I learned from a very early teacher I had, is one of my dad's colleagues. I took like 4 or 5 lessons from him when I was like 13, 14, I think. I can't remember. But he gave me this tip that I ended up using, which was whenever you're playing in a key that has a lot of G sharps in it, not A flats, because usually if there's A flats, there's also G naturals in it, like in in our A flat, right? You have to do G to A flat. But if you're in A or E or F sharp or anything where there's G sharps in it, you can leave the G sharp key down and it won't affect any other note. And so that's just one less thing that you have to worry about with your technique. So I do that a lot on E. I kind of figured out that I didn't have to leave it down all the time, but whenever I've got most of my fingers down, I will, leave this down. But certainly, in the beginning learning technique, when I wasn't playing in E or something, I just leave that down the whole time. So if you were playing in, your E major and just leaving it down like this. Doesn't affect any other note, and you just forget about it, and you're never gonna miss that. You're never gonna miss that G sharp. So the next one is kind of like approaching altissimo, but not quite altissimo. It's the fork E and F, and this is this little guy right here on the top. You got your B key, and then you've got this. Sometimes it's a pearl key, and sometimes it's one of these like slider looking things. On this horn, it's like this inverted teardrop shape, which I personally find pretty comfortable. It's better than the Taiwanese horns that have that normal teardrop shape that goes down like this. I never liked that. And the pearl keys are dumb with that. This is way, way better. So I got off on a tangent, sorry. But with the fork E and F, I guess they call it fork because you're kind of spreading your two fingers out kind of like this. Like a snake has like a forked tongue, I guess, so you can think of it that way. So your normal high E is, high D, E flat, and then this side E key right here. So it's like this. If you guys can see, that's your normal E. But with fork E, it's just 2, 3, and then the front fork guy. And then F is the same thing. You just, let go of the G, this guy right here. So E, F, E, F, E, F. And so that is useful for getting up to the altissimo and also to not have to keep using the palm keys because they're notoriously hard to use because you're not even using your fingers. You're using like this part of your hand. And so the less you can use those and get back to just using your fingers is probably going to be better for your technique. Although the tone quality of them is a little wonky sometimes, especially if you kind of don't have a great saxophone. It can be wonky and the intonation can be horrible. But it works for getting up to altissimo and just not being so clumsy. And the last one is the 1 and 2 B flat. So we were talking about this B flat before, right? Where it's this little key next to it, right? But what if you have to go from B to B flat and sliding is not as good of an option for you? I can slide okay, but I don't like to do it a whole lot. I only do it when I have to. But like when I'm going from B to B flat and then to A flat, that's pretty much where I'd have to slide because there's really no better way to do it. But let's say you were playing like an E minor, like a bluesy kind of sound in E minor, and you had to kind of go up from that B flat, that blue note, right, to the B natural, and you didn't want to slide, but doing this was a little bit too much work, or too many fingers you're using. So what you would do is you would just hold down your B and then press the F sharp key down. So that's why it's called 1 and 2, because it's 1 on this hand and 2 on this hand. I'm not going to stick this finger up for obvious reasons. But, all right, yeah, 1 and then 2 on the left hand. So, and it's kind of a variation of the 1 and 1 fingering that they taught you in elementary school, but it's a little bit more in tune. But I don't advise you using 1 and 1 or 1 and 2 B flat very often because it can get hairy really fast. But that can kind of sound like this if you're going to use it. So Bflat is good for doing that kind of thing. So those are some little mini trick fingerings that you guys can use on saxophone. This works for both alto, tenor, soprano, baritone, everything. They work for all of them. All of the saxophones have these tricks built into them. I believe so, right? Unless you're playing a Mark 6 soprano, in which case it doesn't have, I don't think it even has the fork on it. But most modern sopranos have a fork on it, like Yamahas and stuff. But everything else, they have it, and you can use it to make your technique more efficient. And I've used them all the time for all sorts of things. They're really effective with chromatics a lot of times because you're not flip-flopping and stuff. And yeah, so those are some trick fingerings on the saxophone you can use to make your technique a little better. I will see you in the next video. Thank you. Okay, so I hate me.